Jared Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com, and this is your Photo News Fix. This fix is brought to you by the 2019 My Road Reel competition. Now in its 6th year, My Road Reel has over $1 million in prizes to be won across 28 categories. Anyone can enter, and that even means you, Dan. You can enter. Head on over to bit.ly/FroReel19 to download the starter pack right now and get shooting. Good luck. Did you wake up the other day to an email from Adobe saying you could be sued if you don't delete software that you're still using? I know I did. Last week, Adobe announced you would no longer be able to download older versions beyond the latest 2 releases of Creative Cloud. Now that decision didn't seem to weigh too heavily on my mind, as generally speaking, we update to the latest versions anyway. Well, my happy cloud...
Use just the corner of the brush.
Now my happy cloud was burst when I received an email that said the following. We have recently discontinued certain older versions of Creative Cloud applications, and as a result, under the terms of our agreement, you are no longer licensed to use them. Our records show that you may be using the following versions of these applications: Media Encoder and Premiere 11.1. Please be aware that should you continue to use the discontinued versions, you may be at risk of potential claims of infringement by third parties. Now, I can't share my initial reactions to this email for legal reasons, but this is pretty close. I honestly think that's how most people would react if they got an email like that. Now, we have good reasons for still using 11.1 on one of our machines. The reason is that the live box that we use only saves files in AVI, and Macs don't like that anymore. So we can only use 11.1 because that's when you could still use AVIs on the Mac. If you're upset with Adobe for this, maybe it's not their fault. Creative Cloud apps may contain copywritten software or features by third parties, and when terms change, you may be at risk of being sued for copyright infringement. One angry Adobe customer took to Twitter to complain, and I quote, "Can someone explain to me how a company gets so out of touch with reality and becomes so vampiric that they think that sending legal threats to their own customers is a good idea?" At Adobe Cares. Well, Adobe Cares replied with this. Shut up! Actually, no, they replied with this. Customers who continue to use or deploy unauthorized versions of Creative Cloud may face potential claims of infringement by third parties. We cannot comment on claims of third-party infringement as it concerns ongoing litigation. Should you be worried that you might get sued? How would I know? I don't own a Leica. I'm not a lawyer. Yesterday, we shipped out 125 signed and numbered prints as part of my Fro 365 giveaway that's brought to you by Canon printers. Now, there's still 240 prints to go, so head on over to FroKnowsPhoto.com/Fro365 to get entered. Next up, could Canon be getting ready to release the long-awaited and thought-dead EOS 90D? Canon rumors shared a list of possible specs along with a rating of CR1. Now, CR1 means plausible, but from an unconfirmed source, similar to Dan. Nonetheless, here are the rumored specs. The camera might have a 32.4 megapixel APS-C size sensor, dual Digic 8 processors, which would be kind of interesting, dual SD card slots, which I think is questionable, 10 frames a second, ISO range from 100 to 51,200, 45 autofocus points, 4K video at 24 and 30 frames a second, 3.2-inch rear articulating LCD, all for a price of $13.99. Basically, it sounds like the greatest crop sensor camera in the history of crop sensor cameras.
What about the Nikon D500?
A good point, Dan. I stand corrected. Now, what do you think about these specs? Do you even care? Oh snap! Did you hear that? That's the sound of GoPro stock going down the drain.
I didn't have any corn.
But at least they have a waterproof housing built in, unless you took the front glass off like I did. Today, out of nowhere, DJI has dropped their Osmo action cam that from the specs and look of it is going to rival the GoPro Hero 7.
What's in the box?
For one, it has a 1.4-inch front-facing screen.
Oh, would you look at that?
Now you can make sure your framing is right and that it's actually still recording. Also, on the back, there's a 2.25-inch touchscreen. The housing is fully waterproof down to 36 feet. There's a 1/2.3-inch 12-megapixel sensor that can record 4K video up to 60 frames a second at 100 megabits. There's a 3-glass lens that reduces warping and distortion, along with anti-fingerprint and anti-reflective coatings. The battery literally slides into the bottom without needing a door and will give you a reported 91 minutes of recording when shooting 4K 30p with stabilization on. Speaking of stabilization, guess what they called theirs? Anyone? No, Shredder, that's close. It's Rocksteady. Peter McKinnon has a great side-by-side comparison of Rocksteady versus Hypersmooth in the Hero 7 over on his channel. So what's the price? $349. Yep, it's $50 less than the GoPro with better features. Now I'll be picking up at least one of these. Will you? And finally, Nikon has released something truly revolutionary that's never, ever been done before. The new firmware for the Z6 and Z7 add what I have coined as IAF. It's this new feature that allows the camera to find the eye and... What's that, Dan?
It's been done before.
Oh, right. Sony's had that for years now.
Duh.
Last week, we received an early preview, because we're special over here at FroKnowsPhoto, of the new Nikon firmware and decided to run it through its paces. We did a real-world review of Nikon's attempt at IAF by photographing my friend Allison, who was in need of some graduation portraits. We also thought it would be a good idea to put the Z6 IAF head-to-head against the Sony a7 III and EOS R's IAF. We chose to use each brand's current 70-200 2.8 and added Atomos recorders to capture exactly what you would see if you had your eye up to the viewfinder. In our test, the Nikon actually didn't suck. It did better than I thought it would. It's not nearly as good as the Sony, but it's still very usable. I loved having the ability to simply change my framing while shooting with the new 24-70 2.8Z and have the focus stay locked on my subject's eye. Now I know Sony's been doing this for years, but a lot of Nikon photographers, and by a lot I mean me, because this is all about me, we've been waiting for this new feature to show up. The way I see it, Sony's IAF is in college and Nikon is just out of the womb on its mom's. Ow! To check out our in-depth look at all three of these systems' IAFs, please click on the link in the description. Did Nikon's new IAF impress you? And there you have it. That's your photo news fix this time around. To check out the last fix, go ahead and click on the screen right here. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And that's where we'll leave it. Jared, Polin, FroKnowsPhoto.com. See ya.